Conquer the Sky, Christopher Daniels, Frankie Zay, collectively known as SoCal Uncensored or
SCU! This is Catch, Hook, and Shoot, the worst podcast I've ever been on. Word.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Catch, Hook, and Shoot. Today is Sunday, January the 19th, 2020. I want to thank everybody for listening, watching, and subscribing on all podcasting platforms as well as on YouTube. It was off last week, took a little bit of a break. Mentioned the last couple times on the show that I had some family stuff going on. I wouldn't exactly say it's resolved, but it's working itself out the only way that it can. And I'm back. Anybody watching on YouTube can see, I'm in a new little recording space here. So that's definitely a bit of an upgrade. But again, thanks to everybody for listening, watching, and subscribing. Make sure you're following on social media at Catch Hook Shoot. Head over to patreon.com/CatchHookShoot for bonus content and ProWrestlingTees.com/CatchHookShoot for all your t-shirt needs. And starting off the show on a little bit of a sad note again this week. The last couple of weeks we've lost a few people in the wrestling world. First and foremost, La Parka passed away. Now, this is not the La Parka that was in WCW. This is the wrestler that took over the character in AAA after the original La Parka left. He passed away due to injuries that he suffered back in November. Pampero Firpo passed away. If you're not familiar with him, he is actually the one who inspired the Macho Man Randy Savage's "Ooh Yeah," and he was big in the I want to say in the 70s on like the West Coast, Hawaii, that kind of thing. Japanese wrestler Kazuo Sakurada, also known as Kendo Nagasaki, passed away, and probably the one that I'm sure everybody's heard about by now, the father of The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, Rocky Johnson, passed away just earlier this week. So want to send condolences out to all of their friends and families, and rest in peace to all of those gentlemen. So let's jump right back in here after having a week off, and we're kicking it off like we always do with the match of the week. So for the match of the week this week, it's actually coming from Monday Night Raw, something I haven't said in a little while, but I'm talking about the match between Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy. These two, the rivalry with these two, they continue to put on great matches. Both of these guys are extremely good in the ring, and this was the third match that they've had, and just one of the best. I mean, every one that they've had has been great. I'm hoping they can continue this, or they may not. But I'll get into that a little bit later as to why they may not. But Aleister Black, Buddy Murphy from Monday Night Raw this past week. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely go and check it out. These are two guys that definitely deserve a bit of a push in 2020, and I'm thinking they're both probably going to get it. So like I said, if you haven't seen this one, definitely go check it out. Check it out, Aleister Black versus Buddy Murphy from Monday Night Raw. All right, so moving right along here, we're going to jump right into the next segment on the show, which is one of the newer ones, and this is the 3 count. All right, so first up in the 3 count this week, the news was put out there that AEW and TNT have extended their TV deal through 2023, which great news for AEW. Their TV spot is secured for at least another 3 years. And it was also part of the same announcement that there's going to be a second weekly show added, and I guess most likely it's going to be AEW Dark. And I don't know if it's going to be like a primetime show like Dynamite is, possibly a weekend show, or who knows. But either way, AEW is getting a second weekly television show on TNT, so that's awesome. I mean, they've been doing consistently good in the ratings, and people still want to compare them to Monday Night Raw, saying they're not getting not getting those kind of ratings. Well, you know what? Nobody's getting those kind of ratings. Nobody's going to get those kind of ratings. But, AEW consistently drawing between 7 and 900,000 viewers every Wednesday night, that's nothing, that's no small feat. So obviously TNT is very confident in the product and very happy with the ratings that they've gotten so far. So they have seen fit to extend that deal through 2023 and give them another weekly show. So good on AEW there. Next up in the 3 count, Dark Side of the Ring. Very, very popular show on Viceland. If you haven't seen it, I definitely suggest you go check it out. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff in some of the darker areas of pro wrestling, as the title would indicate. But some announcements for season 2 coming up. Some of the topics are going to cover some pretty controversial stuff, and I know a lot of stuff that a lot of people are interested in. First and foremost, they're going to be covering the Chris Benoit tragedy. So I'll be interested to see who exactly is part of that show. I would assume Chris Benoit's son David. Of course, he's been very vocal and things about his father and stuff like that. So that's definitely one to watch for. They're also going to be covering the career of Owen Hart, and they actually did interview his wife Martha for that show. So that should definitely be one to watch. I'm sure they'll have other members of the Hart family. Possibly, I don't know if we'll see any WWE personalities in that one. But I would definitely expect to see probably Bret Hart and other members of the Hart family, possibly, like, I don't know if you'd see Natalya, because, like I said, she is part of WWE. I don't know how involved they would be in a show like this, but possibly, like Davey Boy Smith Jr. or someone like that, possibly Owen's children, because they are, older now, obviously, so they could potentially be part of it. And then the third incident that's going to be covered is the mass transit incident from ECW. Now, for those of you that have not heard about this or don't know the whole story behind it, mass transit was basically a local competitor who filled in a match on an ECW house show, and turned out to be an underage kid. He was only like 17 years old, I think, but a very, very large guy. If you've ever seen the show The Honeymooners, the gimmick he was trying to portray was kind of a Ralph Cramden type character. And somebody didn't make it to the show. This guy went to Paul Heyman, presented, false paperwork, fake ID, that kind of thing. And Heyman, basically said, all right, you're going to fill in for him. And as part of the match, he was supposed to blade, and he had never done it before, and he was wrestling New Jack, of all people, and asked New Jack to blade for him. Basically asked New Jack to cut his head for him. And, it just did not end well at all. So that's definitely another one to watch when Season 2 of Dark Side of the Ring comes on. And the third part of the 3 count this week, the Royal Rumble is coming up, and of course with that every year comes rumors of surprise entrants and returns and things like that, and some of the names that have been thrown around have been just crazy. I mean, Paige was one that was talked about. I don't think that's going to happen with her injuries. I don't think it would allow for it. I don't think she could get cleared. I mean, she couldn't even take a bump when she got the green mist from Asuka when she was kind of expelled as the manager of the Kabuki Warriors. So, I'm not thinking she's going to be part of the Women's Rumble. Another name that there's been a lot of talk about has been Edge. The rumors are out there. He signed a new contract with WWE, and he's been cleared to get back in the ring. Now, we did see, I believe it was back at SummerSlam, he did get in the ring, and he did throw a spear at Elias, so that of course got everybody talking. Another big rumor is CM Punk. He's actually one of the odds-on favorite to win it if you go by the Vegas betting odds, and just because he's back sort of in WWE in some capacity as part of WWE Backstage, so that, of course, started rumors of him returning to the ring. I highly, highly doubt it. I don't see him working that directly with WWE. I mean, on WWE Backstage, he's working for Fox. I don't see him working that directly for WWE, but hey, I could be wrong. Another one rumored to possibly be coming back is Ronda Rousey. Ruby Riot's been out with an injury. She could potentially be almost ready to come back at this point. Velveteen Dream, another one that's been out with an injury, although there was a report recently that the injury was a pretty serious back injury, and he, nowhere near ready to return yet. Of course, everybody's always talking about John Cena possibly popping up. Cain Velasquez, another one. He's actually confirmed for the Royal Rumble, so I think everybody's looking for him to be the one to eliminate Brock Lesnar to set up another match between the two of them. Tyson Fury's another one, although who knows with that one. And then, of course, as always, around this time of year, you start hearing the rumblings about The Undertaker, which, of course, I'd be more than happy to see him come back for the Rumble. Don't necessarily think he'd win it. I don't see him being in a WWE or Universal Championship match at this stage in his career. But as far as making an appearance and then, getting eliminated through maybe some shady means, it would set up a match for him at WrestleMania, which of course is the Undertaker's event. So that that I could see possibly happening. But so many rumors and speculation about people potentially coming back during the Royal Rumble, as there is every year. So let's move into what's been going on in pro wrestling this last week or so. On Raw, we had the return of the Big Show 2 weeks ago, actually. Came out to help out Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens against Seth Rollins and the AOP. And that set up for this past week a fist fight between those two teams, a six-man fist fight. And I guess the only way to win that match was basically referee stoppage. It was the only way to win. No pins, no submissions, no countouts, no DQs, just referee stoppage, and that's it. And AOP and Rollins ended up winning the match with help from Buddy Murphy, who is now apparently part of that faction. So that's why I said earlier I don't know if they're going to continue with the Murphy and Aleister Black storyline that's been going on, unless Aleister Black is going to join up on the Big Show, KO, and Samoa Joe side. So a lot of directions they could go with that, but I like Buddy Murphy as part of that group. So when it comes to factions, I like the four-man factions. That's just kind of my favorite, because any more than that, it gets too big. People start getting lost in the shuffle. Any less than that, it's just a six-man tag team. So, but yeah, Buddy Murphy, I think, a very nice addition to Seth Rollins and AOP. An interesting moment on Raw. Brock Lesnar came out. Paul Heyman was doing his normal, talking, and was interrupted by R-Truth, of all people. And, it was an entertaining segment. R-Truth ended up taking an F5, and then when he was trying to make his way to the back, he was attacked by Mojo Rawley, and Mojo is your new 24/7 champion. Now, that title was swapped back and forth a little bit at a house show, I guess, during the week, too. But last I read, Mojo is currently the 24/7 champion. Moving over to NXT, Mercedes Martinez has signed a contract with WWE, finally. I know there was a lot of speculation out there as far as where she was going to end up. I mean, she's been around for so long and she is so good. The fact that it took this long for somebody to sign her is honestly a travesty. She should have been signed a long time ago. Personally, I thought she would end up in AEW because she made an appearance at the last pay-per-view. But she did sign with NXT, so good on her. We've got the Final Four of the Dusty Classic coming up this week, and those two matches are going to be Imperium taking on Pete Dunne and Matt Riddle, and then you've got the Undisputed Era taking on the Grizzled Young Veterans. So two matches of NXT versus NXT UK. Now, if I had to pick a final, I would say probably Imperium versus the Undisputed Era, and that would be just a ridiculous match for the finals of the Dusty Classic. But honestly, any two of these four teams would have a great match in the finals. Also, this past week saw the return of Kacy Catanzaro. There was a lot of talk that she had retired because of, I believe it was a back injury that had kept her out for a while, but she did return this past week in the number one contender battle royal for the NXT Women's Championship, which was won by Bianca Belair. So she'll be challenging Rhea Ripley at NXT TakeOver Portland. Actually, either Rhea Ripley or Toni Storm, depending on what happens at the Worlds Collide pay-per-view next week, but we'll get into that in a minute. This coming week on NXT, we're going to see a North American title match with Keith Lee and Roderick Strong. And I think, me personally, it is time to strike while the iron is hot with Keith Lee. I mean, had an amazing end to 2019 with the Survivor Series and TakeOver War Games. He's one of the most popular wrestlers in NXT with the crowd. So I think it's time to put a belt on him and, and see how far he can take it. Some other interesting NXT news. They've been trying out a new tag team on the house show circuit, and that tag team is Mike Kanellis and Tony Nese. Definitely an interesting pairing, and I think they would complement each other pretty well. So hopefully we'll see that team on TV in the near future. Some interesting news on SmackDown. Kane made an appearance on SmackDown, announced his entry into the Royal Rumble, and while Kane was in the arena, of course, the lights went down, red lights came up, the Fiend came out from under the ring, and Kane had already gotten out of the ring at this point, and he basically just turned to the Fiend and said, "What took you so long?" And then from behind, Daniel Bryan attacked the Fiend and just beat him back into his hole in the ring. So that was really the first time we've seen somebody get one up on the Fiend. So that was a pretty interesting moment. So I'm wondering if that is a kind of a prelude of things to come with the Universal Championship match coming up at the Royal Rumble. Moving on to the Worlds Collide pay-per-view coming up next Saturday prior to the Rumble. This one is basically NXT versus NXT UK across the board, and this is a killer lineup. I mean, the main event, you've got an 8-man tag match between Imperium and the Undisputed Era. That's a main event pretty much anywhere in the world. Rhea Ripley defending the NXT Women's Championship against Toni Storm. Finn Balor taking on Ilya Dragunov. That one is going to be a fantastic match with those two guys, no doubt about it. Angel Garza defending the Cruiserweight title against Isaiah Swerve Scott, Jordan Devlin, and Travis Banks. So you've got 2 from NXT, 2 from NXT UK in a 4-way match for the Cruiserweight title. And then a kind of a special tag team match. I wouldn't necessarily call it a grudge match, but definitely a dream match here. DIY, the reunited DIY of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa taking on Mustache Mountain, Trent Seven, and Tyler Bate. That one, I'm going to go on record right now, that match is going to steal the show. Possibly the entire weekend, DIY versus Mustache Mountain. So I cannot wait to check that out next Saturday. Getting into some AEW news, the fourth member of the Nightmare Collective was revealed to be independent wrestler Dr. Luther. I don't think too many people are familiar with him, but he's got a great look. He's kind of their, I guess you could say, their enforcer to a certain extent. So I'm digging Dr. Luther so far. I mean, I'm one of those that wasn't real familiar with him. I'd heard the name before, but I didn't know a whole lot about him. But I'm definitely liking it so far. 2 weeks ago on AEW, Jon Moxley gave his answer to Chris Jericho about joining the Inner Circle. Originally said yes, and turned out to be a swerve. Busted a bottle of the bubbly over Jericho's head, and basically said, I'm not joining Inner Circle. And then this week we saw Cody accepted MJF's terms for the match between he and MJF at the next pay-per-view, Revolution. The first of those terms, a cage match versus Wardlow, is going to take place February 9th in Atlanta on Dynamite, so I cannot wait to see that. You guys have heard me talk ad nauseum about Wardlow, so his first match in AEW is going to be a cage match against Cody Rhodes, and that's, I can't wait to see it. Then we also saw Chris Jericho attack Moxley after Moxley had won his match this past week. Kind of a throwback to the old, if any of you guys remember when the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, turned heel on Dusty Rhodes. I believe it was Animal, took a spike off of his shoulder pads and dug it into Dusty's eye. Jericho kind of did the same thing, took a spike off of his jacket and didn't dig it into his eye, but just kind of basically stabbed him in the face with it, So it was definitely a throwback to that Dusty Road Warriors kind of moment. I thought it was pretty cool. But next week we are going to have a number one contenders match with Jon Moxley versus Pac. That's going to be actually, I guess, taking place on the Jericho Cruise. There's where AEW Dynamite is going to originate from this coming week, so that should be pretty cool. Then there were a lot of rumors this week about Brian Cage signing with AEW. Now, those have been shot down by both Cage and his wife, Melissa Santos. But, basically they said that nothing had been signed. Doesn't mean an offer hasn't been made. Doesn't mean negotiations aren't going on. But they both basically said nothing has been signed. So, but I'd love to see Cage show up in AEW. I think he's one of the top guys out there right now. And, he's one that I just, and somebody mentioned it online as well when this was out there, when the rumors started floating around out there. Cage could potentially be Cody's backup to kind of counteract Wardlow. And I've seen Cage and Wardlow in the ring previously at Warrior Wrestling. And that's something that needs to be on a big stage like AEW. Getting into some Ring of Honor stuff going on here. Looks like Marty Scurll has actually re-signed with Ring of Honor. Bit of a surprise because I know a lot of people expected to see him in AEW with the rest of the Elite. But apparently Ring of Honor offered him what was being called WWE main event money. How could you turn something like that down? Plus, they apparently made him head booker for Ring of Honor. That's a spot that's been held by Delirious for a number of years. Delirious obviously still working in creative, and I'm sure, working with Marty. But, Marty Scurll made the head booker as part of his new contract. Now, this next part, I don't know how much is true. Apparently, it's for only 40 dates a year that he has to wrestle. So if that's the case, then that's outstanding for him. And it also allows him to work independents as well as with the NWA, which apparently looks like there is a working relationship between the NWA and Ring of Honor. We had Nick Aldis appear at a Ring of Honor event and attack Marty Scurll. This was after Marty Scurll appeared at the NWA's last pay-per-view, Into the Fire, and showed up at the TV tapings the following week. So, it looks like NWA and Ring of Honor are going to be working together for at least a little bit here. So let's get into going from there. Let's get into the NWA news. Scott Steiner has joined the Strictly Business faction in the NWA. Now that faction is made up of Nick Aldis as well as the Wild Cards. So looks like Scott Steiner is the newest member there. Coming up this next week on NWA Power, Ricky Morton is getting a shot at the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship against Nick Aldis. Now, Rock and Roll Express are already NWA World Tag Team Champions. Ricky Morton has had, and I'm talking back in the day, back in the 80s, against Ric Flair and stuff, he's had world title shots before. He's been in that main event spot before. So I never did win the title, but I think it'd be cool if they put the title on him, even if it's just for a couple of weeks. So, even if he, wins the title and then loses it back to Aldis the following week, I think it'd be pretty cool to see Ricky Morton as a world champion, just even for a little while. Another pay-per-view coming up next week is the next NWA pay-per-view called Hard Times, and again, it looks like a great lineup. We're going to have it's basically all about the World TV Championship tournament, but we are going to have an interpromotional match between the NWA and Ring of Honor, and that's Nick Aldis taking on Flip Gordon. So that should be an interesting match right there. Then the TV title tournament, we've got Tim Storm taking on Zane Dawson. Ricky Starks versus, to be announced. There's 2 open slots here that they have not announced who's going to be taking them. So I'm guessing there are going to be some surprises at this pay-per-view. Then Zicky Dice taking on another to be announced on the... excuse me, and then the question mark, another one, question mark taking on to be determined. So, and then you've got the semifinal and the final. So basically, the majority of the pay-per-view is going to be the TV title tournament. So should be interesting. I'm curious to see who some of these to be announced ones are, and who's going to come out eventually as the new NWA World TV Champion. Moving into some Impact news, we have a new Impact World Champion in Tessa Blanchard defeated Sami Callihan at their pay-per-view last week. So that's definitely, Impact taking a chance here, putting their top title on Tessa Blanchard. And, a lot of controversy surrounding Tessa the last couple of weeks about some things that she said, several years ago. and her attitude and the way that she has treated people. I'm not going to get into all that. I try to avoid the big outside the ring controversies, because it's just it's not about wrestling. That's about the wrestlers' personal lives, and so I try to. I try to stay away from that just because the show's supposed to be fun. This isn't me spouting my political thoughts or anything like that. But, if some of these allegations about Tessa are true as far as the racism and the bullying and everything, I will just say this. It's not, it's not that kind of stuff doesn't have, it's not just that it doesn't have a place in pro wrestling, it doesn't have a place in the world. I mean, come on. When you get right down to it, the very concept of racism is just completely ignorant. Same thing with bullying. It's just, it's just not even something I there's no excuse for it. There's no justification for it. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Like I said, there's just no place for it in the world in general. And I'll leave it at that. Moving into some MLW news, the Dynasty has a new member. Of course, the Dynasty is MJF, Richard Holiday, and Alexander Hammerstone. Their newest member is Gino Medina. And he was a highly sought-after talent in MLW. He basically had, he had Conan trying to get him, had Selena De La Renta trying to get him for Promociones Dorado, and he ended up going with the Dynasty. So it just makes the Dynasty an even stronger faction in MLW. So I'm interested to see where they're going to go with this. So that's pretty much it for the news and rumors for the week. So now we're going to get into our next segment, which is the Indie Cut with my buddy Charlie G.
Hey there, wrestling fans. I am Charlie G with your Indie Cut. It has been a busy 2 weeks on the scene, so let's get to it. As promised, I said I would recap the ICW New York No Holds Barred show from January 4th. Let's just say this was not the show for me. It was more like an extreme, ultra extreme rules show. So if you're into that, cool for you. First off, the ropes of chains. No turnbuckles, and wooden planks in two corners for the high spots. Looked cool. Thought it was going to be interesting. This did not go that way. The show started off with Nick Gage versus Tessa Blanchard, which surprised me as the first match. If this was the warrant match for Sami Callihan against Tessa, it felt way too short. It was like 8 minutes. These two can go a lot longer than 8 minutes. They traded nice hard shots in and out of the ring, and it ended with Tessa winning with a twisting DDT. The win didn't come without controversy, as it looked like Gage kicked out just before the 3 count. I guess it was to save face or to just pick on the referee, which Gage did so. After the match, Tessa said she was liking the ICW vibe and called out Amazing Red. So we shall see what happens down the line. There was supposed to be a match between Chris Dickinson versus Killer Cross and Eddie Kingston versus Tony Deppen. Well, neither happened, with the report of Dickinson being in the hospital with pneumonia and Kingston having his knee drained and unable to travel. So with both opponents not at the show, Killer Cross took on Tony Deppen. This looked like Sid Vicious against Jamie Noble, if you remember how those guys looked. Cross tossed Deppen around quite a bit, sometimes by his jean shorts. Deppen did make a comeback, attacking Cross's legs, even putting him in an STF, but Cross won, hitting 3 rolling Saito suplexes. These were the only 2 non-violent matches of the show, which had the likes of Homicide, Necro Butcher, Slack, Alex Colon, Jimmy Lloyd, Low-Key, and Mance Warner against Dan Maff in his last indie show before joining Ring of Honor. Maff won with a burning hammer through a door. Like I said, it wasn't quite my show, but if you like that extra extreme stuff, this was the show for you. Now from news on January 10th at St. Louis Anarchy, Gateway to Anarchy 2020, Fred Yehai challenged Warhorse for his IWTV Independent Wrestling Championship in his 24th defense. Yehai was in control most of the match, but Warhorse pulled out yet another victory, reversing a small package. This weekend had a lot of that. If you're an indie guy, stop with small packages, please. At Freelance 2020, a Freelance Odyssey here in Chicago at the Logan Square Auditorium. They open with an 8-man number 1 contender Scrabble match for the Freelance World Championship against Kylie Ray later in the night. Kylie was on commentary and was sweet as could be. Her smile just even went through the screen. It was just great. Kobe Durst stole the victory from Project Monix, who was about to win after hitting his finisher. So it will be Durst against Kylie Ray later in the night. After he retained his Freelance Legacy Championship against Dan the Dad, and the Space Pirates retained the Freelance World Tag Team titles against GPA and Jesus Bryce. Finally, in the main event, Kylie Ray, the world champion, took on Kobe Durst. It was a good, fun match with Kylie retaining the title with an STF to Durst. At the end of the match, Kylie got jumped by 2 masked men who turned out to be Robert Anthony and Frank the Clown. After Frank won his match earlier in the evening, his 3rd match ever, he challenged her to a championship match at their next show on February 7th, claiming to take everything from her, including her smile. What an ass. At PCW Ultra Anniversary 2020 show, Sumi Sakai lost her PCW Ultra Women's title to Ruby Rage. Douglas James won the PCW Ultra Light Heavyweight title, defeating then champion Jake Atlas in his last PCW show, and Dom Kubrick. And finally, Alexander Hammerstone defeated Mil Mortes to become the new PCW Ultra Heavyweight Champion to finish off a busy Friday night. Yes, that was pretty much all at the same time. On January, Saturday the 11th, GCW's I Can't Feel My Face. Joey Janela was back on commentary, which is always a fun experience. Sounds like he is still booking shows, which is always good to hear. I've been a fan of his since Spring Break 2017. During intermission, Janela said he got his wish and will return to action for GCW, and that will be at the February 15th show, claiming he will never leave GCW until they have to carry him out. I believe that. The show started off with a 6-man Scrabble match with my new favorite wrestler, Blake Christian, defeating Treehouse Lee. Yes, the match started off with another choreographed set from Christian, but it's always fun how he does it. He's getting it, and he doesn't care what anyone says. Christian won after hitting an Osprey elbow into a top rope corkscrew splash. It was an awesome match, I might say, and an awesome move. Jake Atlas, in what was said to be his farewell indie match, lost to Tony Duffin, who hit a middle rope Canadian Destroyer and a beheading elbow. It was a solid match between these two, I must say. Sad to see Jake leave the Indies, but I'm sure he will do better things. He'll do great things in NXT. Now for the main event, which was Nick Gage versus Killer Kross. Kross jumped the bell as Gage was trying to get to Ricky Shane Page, who was in the previous match, who technically stole his title earlier in the year. Kross still wearing his suit. Sounded like some flight issues, so he didn't look too happy, but when does he? He busted Gage open with a couple hard shots to the face, so this turned into a nice little bloodbath. It was a hard-hitting match. Gage ended up putting a rear naked choke on Kross, who was still wearing a suit, and the ref had called for the bell. It was a good GCW show to start the year. So, from overseas news, from January 5th at Pro Wrestling Noah, Michael Elgin won a match in 8 seconds against Musoya Inoue. Sorry for the pronunciation. Thunder Rosa became the first non-Japanese wrestler to win a title in Tokyo Yoshi Pro Wrestling when she defeated Maki Ito to be crowned International Princess Champion. And on January 10th at RevPro's New Year's Revolution, David Starr defeated Shane Custom to become the new SWE World Heavyweight Champion. And January 11th at EVE Wrestle Queendom 3, Charlie Evans and Millie McKenzie became the new EVE Tag Team Champions. That was actually a fun show. Better than Evolution, I might say. As for this week, it's been pretty quiet. As of recording this Saturday afternoon, last night at Evolve 143, the besties in the world retained their Evolve tag titles against The Unwanted, and Anthony Green defeated Josh Briggs in a no DQ match. The rest of the weekend action happens later today with Black Label Pro Nobody Puts BLP in the Corner, Glory Pro David Lee Memorial Tournament, Evolve 144, GCW Take a Picture, and Progress Chapter 101. So I will recap all that next week, along with AAW's A New Dawn, along with any other shows that might pop up along the way. In gaming news, Retromania Independent Wrestlers Tournament Round 1. The results for in the Dreamer Division, Matt Cross defeated Jeff Connolly. Luke Hawks defeated Elliott Russell. Steve Miggs defeated Gregory Iron. The Man Scout defeated Andy Dalton. In the Retro Division, Simon Miller defeated Dave Dahl. Warhorse defeated Hugh Manley. Caleb Connolly defeated Kevin Koo. Joey Spencer defeated Matt Sigmund. And in the Powerhouse Division, Travis Cotterbelly defeated Carter Mason. Eric Canyon upset Alex Zane. Sugar Duncanton defeated Thomas Santel. And Dan Barry defeated Jay Bradley. Round 2 has started. And so far in the MENA Division, Chris Bay defeated Shane Mercer. And Anthony Green lost to Colby Carino. And then yesterday in the Dreamer Division, Matt Cross defeated Steve Miggs. And today's vote was Luke Hawks versus the Man Scout. So remember, you can vote on Facebook, Twitter feed, Instagram post, and Instagram story. That's it for me. Until next week, that's a wrap. Back to you, Tom.
All right, so that was Charlie G with the Indie Cut. Thank you again, Charlie. I cannot express enough how much I appreciate his contribution to the show. So happy to have him as a new part of the show in 2020, and he's doing an awesome job so far. So definitely show him some love with some comments and things like that. And that's like I said, I can't thank him enough. Can't say enough to show my appreciation for what he's contributing to the show every week. So let's get into our next little segment here, which is one of my favorites, like always, and that's the Troll of the Week. So the Trolls, plural, of the week this week is everybody who's hating or has a problem with Tessa Blanchard winning the Impact World title. Now, I'm not talking about the people that have a problem with her, with the accusations of the bullying or the attitude or the racism or things like that. I don't have a problem with people that are, on her about that, rightfully so. My problem is the people who, for some reason, take issue with a woman winning the world title, with a woman being the top champion in a company. I mean, that to me, it's blatant sexism. Honestly, that's what it is. I mean, I saw so many people make the exact same comment. Oh, that's it. That killed the division, or it killed Sami Callihan's career, or it killed Impact. Guys, Impact's been dying for 18 years. I think it's okay. I really do. So and it's ridiculous. I mean, there's no rule, there's no law that says a woman can't be the top champion in a wrestling company. I mean, it's pro wrestling, guys. It's not a legit straight up one-on-one fight. No company would ever allow that. A straight up no. You're never going to see an MMA fight between a man and a woman. You're just not. It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to sign it. I mean, if they're in the same weight class, I don't see a problem with it. If they don't have a problem fighting each other, and they're in the same weight class, then hey, more power to them. But beyond that, I mean, you're never going to see it happen in boxing or MMA or any other sports, really, like the NFL or the NBA or even Major League Baseball. And in some of those cases, I don't understand why, because take baseball, for example. It's a non-contact sport. And, I'm positive there are women out there that can play just as good as any man out there. So, why not give one of them a shot on a major league team? But, it just shows people's attitudes towards women when they say, stuff like, Tessa winning the title is kills the division, or it kills the company, or it's somehow damaging to Sami Callihan. I mean, Sami, while maintaining his heel persona, has been one of the biggest advocates of women in pro wrestling, and being in that main event spot and being in a top spot for the company. So, obviously Sami didn't have a problem with it. He went out there, he had the match. He's had this long feud with Tessa. They've had several matches, and he, in this particular case, he did the job for her. So, obviously Sami doesn't take issue with it. And, it's definitely a gutsy move on Impact's part. It's something that's never been done before by a major company. It was done, in Lucha Underground, but I think that's really about it. And, so, I mean, hey, love it or hate it, it is what it is. Tessa Blanchard is the Impact World Champion. So, good for Tessa. Like I said, this isn't about the people that are getting on her about the bullying and things like that. This is for people that are getting on her that just simply have an issue with a woman being the world champion. I mean, it's just, it's stupid. It really is. So, good for Tessa. Hope she has a great title reign. And, yeah, it is what it is. Love it or hate it, Tessa's your Impact World Champion. Me personally, I like it. So I'm curious to see where we're going to go from here. Who's going to be the next challenger? Is it going to be a woman? Is it going to be a man? Is it going to be another member of OVE perhaps? Also some more Impact news I forgot to mention. At the TV tapings this week in Mexico, Jordynne Grace defeated Taya Valkyrie to end her over 1 year reign as the Knockouts champion. So congrats to Jordynne Grace, one of my favorite wrestlers out there right now, your new Knockouts champion. And also it was announced that Impact is bringing back the Lockdown event, where it's the whole event is all cage matches. So that should be interesting. That was always my favorite Impact pay-per-view. So anyway, that's going to do it for the Troll of the Week. So we're going to roll right along into the next segment, which again, this one is becoming one of my favorites because it's a lot of fun to put together, and I'm talking about the Fantasy Booker. Alright, so the Fantasy Booker is exactly what it sounds like. In case you missed the first show of 2020 where I explained all these segments, it's just me saying, talking about what ifs and what I think would have been some cool matchups somewhere in the history of wrestling. And this week I'm talking about some of my absolute favorites, ever to set foot into a ring. And I'm talking about the tag team match. It never happened, but I think it would not have been a technical masterpiece by any means, but I think the popularity of these guys would have just made it, the match would have been off the charts. And I'm talking about the Road Warriors and the Blade Runners. Now, if you're not familiar with the Blade Runners, that was the tag team formed by Sting and the Ultimate Warrior at the very beginning of their careers. And at the time, the Ultimate Warrior was known as Blade Runner Rock, believe it or not. So, but yeah, you think about the careers that all these guys have had. The Road Warriors, considered by many to be one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Some would say the greatest tag team of all time. Sting, of course, his career speaks for itself. Ultimate Warrior, WWE Hall of Famer. That didn't have the longest career. Had a lot of I guess you could say attitude issues that caused him problems with with his career, with whatever company he was with. But still no denying his popularity at the height of his career. So if you think about, had the Blade Runner stuck together, had the Ultimate Warrior not left Mid-South Wrestling, and had they stayed together through the WCW buyout of Mid-South, or the UWF as it was known at the time, and the Road Warriors were part of WCW then as well, I think that could have been an amazing rivalry with these guys. You've got four big, strong, muscled up, just badasses in the ring, and it, like I said, the match would not have been a technical masterpiece. It would have been a straight up brawl. It would have been punches and kicks and power moves, and that's that would have been that. But I think the fans would have ate it up, and that's a match I would sit and watch over and over and over again. Like I said, because you're talking about four of my all-time favorites. So that is the fantasy booker for this week: the Road Warriors versus the Blade Runners. Hey, if you've got a WWE video game, maybe not the most recent one, because wow, but where you can do the create a character or whatever. Hey, maybe book that one for yourself. See how it comes out. The Road Warriors versus the Blade Runners. Because, that would have definitely been something that 10, 12-year-old me would have gone nuts for. So, moving on from this fantasy booker, the next and final segment for this week is the Weekly Hot Take. So, my weekly hot take for this week is, we will never, ever see a quote-unquote gimmick wrestler or a masked wrestler or any type of character wrestler be the WWE Champion. Now, I'm talking the WWE Championship. I'm not talking about the Universal title. I'm not talking about the World Heavyweight title from several years ago. I'm talking about the top title, the WWE Championship. You're never ever going to see a gimmick wrestler or a masked wrestler or a small wrestler, for that matter, as your WWE champion. I mean, you've seen Rey Mysterio as WWE champion for about a half an hour, or as far as small guys go, Ray was small too, small and masked, but Kofi Kingston, not the biggest guy, but he was WWE champion for a little while there. But these are the exceptions. These are not these are the exceptions to the rule, because you look at somebody like Goldust, Dustin Rhodes, one of the best workers in wrestling for the last couple of decades, and never even really got a chance at the WWE title, or somebody like Doink. I know that Doink the freaking clown, but I mean, you look at the person under the face paint, tremendous wrestler, and I'm talking about the first Doink, tremendous wrestler, great in-ring worker, but never would have been put in a main event program, or and again, I'm not talking about like the Universal title. Obviously, the Fiend is the Universal Champion right now. He's masked and he's a gimmick, but again, it's an exception, and also it's the Universal title. But back in the day, you would have never seen Hillbilly Jim as the WWE champion. Just wasn't. I mean, the last real character or gimmick person to hold the WWE title, and I'm not even sure you could really call him a character wrestler or a gimmick wrestler, was Diesel, Kevin Nash. Since then you've had Bret Hart and Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels and Triple H and The Rock, and Mick Foley was WWE champion 3 times for a total of I want to say just barely over 100 days. Again, that's another exception to the rule, but it's and I don't understand why. Like I said, I was talking about Goldust, and I put Goldust in my list of best wrestlers to never be world champion. He's in the same category to me as like a Scott Hall or a Roddy Piper or Jake the Snake Roberts. Guys who just who were so popular and so over with the crowd, but just never got that world title program for one reason or another, whatever it might be. And it just seems to be, I don't know if it's just a WWE thing or if it's a wrestling thing, but I liken it more to WWE, is that, you don't see, like, I don't think we're ever going to see Kalisto as the WWE champion. He doesn't fit the mold of what Vince McMahon wants as his top guy. Same thing. I don't think we're ever going to see Tony Nese as WWE champion. As good as he is, as great of a look as he has, he's a cruiserweight. So I don't. And it just, if you look at the WWE championship throughout the years, there's a pretty set mold, I guess you could say, of what the WWE champion is supposed to be. And I know that that's something that's set by Vince McMahon, obviously, but I just think it's kind of, I don't know if sad's the right word, but because there's so many guys out there that legitimately, I think, deserve or deserved at least a shot, or at least an opportunity at the main event. Not necessarily, have to be the champion, but to at least be in the mix. Like Goldust is one of them. Is one of them. And I know I keep coming back to Dustin Rhodes, but you look at the career he had. Look at the character he was given in WWE. And a lot of people speculate that the Goldust character again was another shot at Dusty. And he took it and he ran with it, and he just, he made it his own, and he made it one of the most popular characters in WWE. Whether he was a babyface, a heel, whatever, he got over, and I think the character overshadowed his work, which is honestly a travesty, because, like I said, Dustin, one of the best in-ring workers in the business, and so yeah, that's pretty much it for the weekly hot take. Like I said, I don't think we're ever really going to see a small or masked or gimmick or character wrestler as the WWE champion. Now, if I am proven wrong on this at some point in the next few years, hey, great. That's awesome. That just means that more guys are getting that opportunity based on their skill set and not the character that they've been saddled with. So that's pretty much going to do it for this week. Again, I appreciate everybody listening, watching, and subscribing on all your podcasting platforms as well as YouTube. Make sure you're following on social media at CatchHookShoot. Head over to patreon.com/CatchHookShoot for all your bonus content, and ProWrestlingTees.com/CatchHookShoot for all your t-shirt needs. And if you ever want to shoot me an email, it's catchhookshoot@gmail.com. I want to thank everybody again for sticking with me after last week when I had to kind of take a little break for a while. And I'm gonna end the show the way I did last time. I'm gonna tell you, keep the people that are important to you close. Let them know how important they are to you. And because I'm going to steal a line from JR here, tomorrow's not guaranteed, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, somebody's going to pass away, but stuff happens, and you may not get the opportunity for whatever reason to let them know what they mean to you. So there's, somebody in your life that's important to you. Make sure they know. And make sure you show them as well as tell them. So with that, I'm going to sign off. I appreciate every last one of you that listens to the show. Can't thank you enough for just listening to my ramblings about pro wrestling every week. It means more to me than I can ever express to you guys. So I am going to sign off. Hope everybody has a great week, and I will talk to you guys soon.